Want to talk about topics, or are we just going to dive right into something?
Well, let me see if we're on, if we are live on Instagram. We are.
Oh, we're already live. Okay.
Yeah. So, so next time happen. Oh wait, let me take this banner off. Hang on. We got to unbrand us. Oh, dang it. I had a Team Troponin brand. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. No, I don't have topics. I figure we just we could talk about Sucralose article that everyone's. Have you seen that?
No, actually. Which one is it? What's the outcome?
Well, there was a study in vitro that showed that a sucralose was genotoxic in vitro at doses equivalent to like 800. Well, I think it was actually 800 Coke Zeros or something like that.
Okay.
But what's funny about that is everything's genotoxic. Sucralose, like actual table sugar, is genotoxic to folate deficient cells, not even in vitro. So
a dumb one now. What is genotoxic? What it sounds like toxic to your DNA?
Like, change your DNA genetic structure.
Okay.
But I mean, it would be, you'd have to drink 225 gallons of a Coke Zero instantly and have all 225 gallons instantly present at a cell, which isn't possible because most of it doesn't ever enter the bloodstream.
I was going to ask how they even conducted the study to find that out, but you said it was in vitro, right?
Yeah. So they just put it right onto cells, which would never be possible in real life.
Well, you can't have much fluid, but I started to wonder, okay, what if you just ingested the powder? But I think
it would be, that's 800 Coke Zeros. I think I'm getting feedback, but that's 800 Coke Zeros directly onto the cell. A very small percentage actually enters the bloodstream. So it wouldn't be drinking 200 gallons. You'd have to drink like 20,000 gallons instantly.
Okay. Or eat 40,000 packets of Splenda.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, it would be like a house full of, but there was, so I'm getting a lot of emails about that now, because people are, they hear some influencers say that, they can't do that. And so now everyone is sure that sucralose is going to kill them. The problem is, what do you switch to? You switch to aspartame, because aspartame went through the same thing with people misinterpreting the aspartame studies 20 years ago. So are we back to that now? Everyone that refused to take aspartame, well, they're not. They want to go to stevia because they think stevia is natural. But what's funny about that is stevia is banned in half the world. I'm getting really bad feedback on you. Is your mic pointed close to a speaker or something?
Probably. Let's see. Is that any better?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Hang on. I got to present so I can, or else I won't be able to see. And if we get any viewers or comments, hey, we do.
We do.
Hey, Twin, the conference was good. What's up, Bobby? Yeah, Dave's back. So what? so next time happen. Oh wait, let me take this out. Okay, we're way behind. We're way lagging on that. I don't know how to do the live without the. Oh, I can see the comments right here, I think. Yeah, okay, I can. I'm going to get a boomer comment here for sure. So everyone wants to switch to stevia, which is I don't even know. I think I had it paused. So just so everyone knows, we're talking about the sucralose article where everyone's panicking about sucralose because a study showed that it's genotoxic when you put the equivalent of about 800 Coke Zeros instantaneously on a cell, which you could never do outside of in vitro because most of the sucralose won't actually enter a cell. it's passed right through the body. So it would be the equivalent of eating like 50 or 60,000 packets of Splenda, probably more than that even, all at once. It might be even like 1 million packets. I mean, it's a really incredibly high number, but that's not even the problem. The fact that it's genotoxic. What people don't realize is table sugar is genotoxic in folate deficient cells, and not even in vitro, in moutho. So it's like really, really dumb. So everyone's panicked about sucralose for no reason, for the wrong reasons, and they're all, aspartame went through the same thing 20 years ago. So now people are switching back to aspartame, which is hilarious because aspartame, well, because people don't know it, but it's been long enough since all the aspartame studies got misinterpreted 20 years ago that most people forgot about that. Or they're switching to stevia, which is hilarious to me because you can't sell that in half the world. It's banned. It's really not good for you. And even in America, stevia is banned. The only thing you can sell in America is purified stevia extract.
Yeah.
And then, or erythritol, which is even worse. And so
stevia doesn't even taste good, so that's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, but it's so frustrating to me because, sucralose, people don't realize right now they have GRAS, G-R-A-S, good, generally recognized as safe. And that's the only requirement you have to meet to be a food product. But before 2000, it was pre-GRAS. I don't know what the exact year was, but stevia was like 98, which was way before GRAS. It had to go through 10 years of clinical testing to get approval. And then even then it was only approved at first for like 15 applications, like if there's like a level or something. And then it, passed that, and then it got approved. So sucralose is approved for all food supplements in any quantity, in any amount, without any prerequisites. Anyone can put sucralose in anything and sell it. Stevia, you can't sell stevia period to half the world. And in America, if you want to sell it, you can only sell it if it's purified stevia extract. And then, so it's really, hey, Jatinder, what's up? So it's really just ridiculous because it's people that don't understand how to read studies. And then some influencer, someone who doesn't know how to read studies, puts information out there, and they're pointing to people to more dangerous choices. And it's a moot point in the end anyways, because regular old sucrose, which is in everything, table sugar, the common sugar, is genotoxic to folate deficient cells, not even in vitro, just taken orally.
Are your clients worried about health in a kind of hippy-dippy sense, or are they more whether or not it prevents them from getting lean?
No, they just don't. People don't. I mean, you forget, like, when this is what you do all day, that most people, like if I walk in on a violin practice, I won't know what anything means, And so if someone tells me something about a violin that they're speaking from what seems to be a position of authority, and they tell me that you can't use this type of violin, it's impossible to sound good with it, or anything, this type of violin has a resin that will cause cancer. I don't know what from what, And so it's more that, people are relying on you for their information. And so or relying from the internet, or relying from people who are supposed to be experts. But the problem is you shouldn't be able to speak on anything scientific unless I hate minimum requirements, but you should almost like have to prove that you understand how to read a study. Because that's one of my biggest pet peeves is no one reads studies. And we're going to produce a product, Suppressor Max, soon, which proves that no one reads studies, because if any supplement company out there spent more than 5 minutes doing any kind of actual legitimate research, like scholarly article research and peer-reviewed publications research, we wouldn't be the only ones putting out this product. But no one reads studies. And if you see people get in an internet argument and they, this person says X is true, and then they link a study proving X is true, if you actually read the study, it's at best 50-50 that the study correlates what they're saying. Half the time or more, it actually tells them that they're wrong. Right. They just only know how to read an abstract that implies maybe that they're right. But if they actually read the study.
But most people aren't even reading an abstract. It's like this massive game of telephone where somebody reads an abstract and gets it wrong to begin with, and then it goes through 5 more people before it ever gets to the person that you're reading.
Yep. And
that reminds me of with regards to PEDs, all these people were claiming that like certain ones would increase collagen synthesis and be good for, say, preventing muscle tears. And people had this for years and years, and they'd say, well, EQ is the best for that. But Primo is also pretty good, and Anadrol is really good. I think baseball players take it. And they were always going back to this study, this supposed study that said like, okay, each of these like 4 different compounds increased collagen synthesis so much over baseline. And the only thing I ever found about it was just more parroting the same thing, one forum after another, and you can go back like 15 years. And it's like someone just said this bullshit one time, and it was bandied about as a study.
It's funny you mentioned EQ, because EQ is hilarious to me, because I've seen that run the gamut. I remember like the late 90s when like mis.fit.weights on AOL came up, like the very first chat rooms and stuff, and people were kind of like talking about compounds. And back then, everyone, the gist of EQ was that it was useless. No one, why bother taking it? It does nothing. It's pointless. You know, at least DECA helps your joints. EQ doesn't do anything. And then it went through a phase where it was like, well, it's good for appetite and it raises your red blood cell counts. And then that's what everyone, and then I don't know who was the first one to say this, but at some point, maybe 5 years ago, someone decided that EQ gave you anxiety. And so 20 years ago, not only did it not give you anxiety, but it was worthless. You didn't even, it was no point in taking it. You couldn't feel anything. It didn't do anything. And now everyone says I can't touch EQ. It gives you anxiety. I can't. And it's like, it's hilarious because like, does it? Did you read that? Did someone tell you that? Because 20 years ago, no one said that. In fact, it was the opposite. It was that it was pointless to take because you can't feel anything. And then it went through a phase where it was the only reason you would take it is to increase your appetite. And then went through a phase, the only reason you take it would be to raise your red blood cells. You know, so it's funny to me that how it's not funny for anyone listening. I think it's really important. And I try to, we all get caught in this, and I try to check myself sometimes when I say something and I catch myself saying it fairly often. I'll try to think, why am I saying that? And is that me? Did I understand something? And from that understanding, I took that knowledge and I created this statement, or am I repeating someone else's statement? Mm-hmm. And if it's someone else's statement, how, do I really know it's true? And then if I ever catch myself with that, I have a little moment of panic, and then I'm like, holy shit, that I don't know why I'm saying that. And then I'll go make sure and understand whether I should be saying it or not. And people, I don't think people do that very often, but I think people need to, because that's a really important thing. If you don't know why you're saying something, if you're just saying it because someone else said it, that's the worst, because most people don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, agreed. Back to the sucralose topic. So I don't think we don't think it's unhealthy, and it probably doesn't prevent you from getting lean. But do you ever tell people to pull it out at the end? Because there's kind of two schools of thought here. And I don't think you've ever told me or Danny to worry about it one way or the other. But there's some coaches who just swear they tell their clients 2 or 3 weeks out, stop all artificial anything. Do you think there's?
I would like to, if they could give me an explanation of why, what problems it caused and how it causes those problems, I'd be happy to hear it. But I can tell you, I don't know of any reasons.
Yeah.
And on top of that, everyone if you remember Jose Raymond, he was known for his conditioning, right? When I prepped Luke Sando for I think it was 2017 Arnold, Jose Raymond won the 212 that year. And I hung out, Brad Hall and I hung out with him, and Chris Aceto were at a different table, and they were talking, because I think Chris was prepping them. And Jose Raymond was ordering Diet Cokes from the fountain shooter at the hotel bar the night before the show. He won with insane conditioning. And so that, to me, that's just that's another one. The coaches are saying it. They don't know why they're saying it. They heard someone else say it. If you ask them, well, how will this affect my conditioning? They won't have an answer.
Well, another recent example that I've heard about is Ross Flanagan, who just won.
Blue collar.
Yeah, and he had insane conditioning. I think it was a well-deserved win, certain line conditioning. Granted, he has a sauce company, so you could say there's a conflict of interest here, but he's eating these sucralose-laden sauces right after the show. It seems to have no problem.
No, I mean, what can it do? Hardly any of it gets in the bloodstream. So it needs to get into the bloodstream to affect anything, because if it's affecting water, that means it's doing something with the kidneys. That means at some way when it passes through the kidneys or possibly the liver, there's some mechanism that's causing sodium reabsorption or antidiuretic hormone, vasopressin. It could be affecting. And the thing with that is, even if that is true, we know that those regulate to what your normal intake of nutrients are. And so if that was true, then that would mean if you weren't using artificial sweeteners all prep, it would not be smart to start it during peak week.
Right.
If that's true, which it's not, but if it's true. But also if it's true, that means that if you were ingesting artificial sweeteners all prep, it means that whatever sodium reabsorption or vasopressin antidiuretic hormone effect that it has been leveled out because your body needs to maintain homeostasis. And it's very good at it. Your blood is always 0.9% sodium, you know? And so it's always, because if you know what happens after a show when you eat a bunch of sodium and eat a bunch of excess calories and your blood sodium increases, what does the body do? It holds water to bring that baseline. And what happens at the end of the off season? Are you still holding that massive amount of water? 4 months later, are you still as bloated as you were 4 days after a contest? No, because your body has learned to adapt to it.
Yeah.
So we got some questions here in the comments. Can you see the comments?
Yeah.
Right.
I just pointed my computer away so there wouldn't be feedback, but I can see them.
Okay. So it says, Mark says, Justin, on your video where you went through how you set up diets, your Excel sheet shows for 175-pound male, protein of 240 grams. This plus excess trace proteins and carbs. Wouldn't that be too high? No, and that was probably on a low day where protein is generally higher and fats will be higher. No, and that was for massive, or what? I don't even remember if that was massive or shredded, but no, I mean that's a higher end of protein. I feel like the algorithm would be lower than that, though. I might have to check that.
Yeah, that actually sounds a bit high compared to what you often.
Yeah, because I'm usually about like a 250-pound male, 240-pound male will probably be around 300 grams. Even sometimes I'll use 300 grams all the way up to like 275, 290 pounds sometimes, even depending on how the person, if there's someone who processes carbohydrates really well. But you have to remember that that's not how I set up diets. That program was Massive or Shredded, which uses an algorithm that takes into account your height, your weight, and your estimated body fat percentage, which gives you a lean body mass. And it utilizes your lean body mass compared with like your height and stuff, so I can get an idea of what your bone weight and organ weight will be, and I can get an idea of what your metabolic mass is, and then estimate how many calories the average person would need to get shredded or get massive. It's pretty darn good, and it works for pretty much everyone. But you have to remember, whether you're a 5'2", 103-pound female or a 6'8", 420-pound male, it has to work for everyone. So it has to be a generalized algorithm. I mean, if I really went in and worked with some kind of programming language, I could put in additional conditions and run cases, or but that's at that point, I'm putting it, the price for that would be more than a diet, because that would be like building an entire app, and apps are like $50,000, $100,000. So it's as good as it can get. That seems high. Maybe it was, I'd have to check. But again, it has to work for everyone.
Yeah. Well, on that note, like, if anything, I mean, granted, it's a diet you made for me and not something I got through an app, but I think a lot of other bodybuilders would look at my diet right now throughout the off season and say protein's a little low. And I mean, my low for a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
I'm just a hair under 300 pounds, and it's still on a medium day. It's like 350 if you include the intra workout aminos.
Yeah.
So do you feel like maybe it doesn't necessarily scale with body weight as you get much, much bigger? Because it's not like you're going to have more protein synthesis per hour just because you're already big.
But you'll have more protein turnover, so it will scale to some extent. But again, it generally does increase. But I don't. If anything, I probably err more on the side of higher protein with the smaller people. And partly this is an emotional. I'm getting feedback real bad again. Sorry, it's like an emotional thing, because you got to remember, you're not working with robots, and small, like when guys are 160 pounds. Then they want to add size, and you put them on 25 grams of protein per meal or 30 grams, they won't like it, and they won't. So you almost have to, because you have to give a diet that will work, that the client will also believe will work, or it's not, there's no point in doing it. Yeah. And so I probably err more on the side of higher protein for the lower guys. And then for you anyways, though, you tolerate carbs really well, and you have a very good appetite. So I can give you really high carb amounts, and that's kind of why yours is slightly lower, because typically someone your size would be between 60 and 70 grams of protein per meal.
Okay. I have a blazing metabolism for my size. I mean, it's good. It's good enough that I'm not starving, but I mean, I know I've met other clients of yours who are like, 60 pounds lighter than I am, and they're having to eat more.
Yeah. And the thing is too, and that's why really working with someone is, I mean, you can get pretty close, like Massive and Shred are really good algorithms, and they work well, and they kind of have to overshoot. So the Massive has to be a calorie surplus for even the high metabolism people. So someone with a really sluggish metabolism, it's probably going to cause them to add a little more fat than it should. And shredded has to get everyone shredded, even if they have a terrible metabolism. So if you have a great metabolism, you're going to flatten out pretty quick on it. But that's actually a good example of where I take everything from scratch. Even the same client, when we redo things, like you come out of a rebound or come out of a contest, I might look at your previous diets, but I take with what we know currently, and the diet adjusts based on what's working, so this very well, your current diet very well could have had you at 70 grams of protein per meal if we weren't making the progress we were making and we needed to try something different. But I mean, fuck you, 300 pounds after being like 180 pounds on stage 2 years ago. So it was, I was like, it's working. I'm not gonna mess with something that's working that well. Because even when we tried to pull back, when you were getting pretty uncomfortable, you were still growing.
Yeah. I'm glad we did for a time. The water retention was a bitch.
Yeah. It was, and that's another tough one because your water retention was pretty bad. And I worry about that from a fluid volume and stress on the kidneys and stuff. But man, you were progressing faster than I thought. We were going to stall out about, I think we maybe said we can go back to one of the earlier Troponin episodes. I think we were saying like 285, 290 maybe.
Yeah, you thought that I was going to come out of the last prep and end up about the same off-season weight, just kind of rounder and harder. But then I ended up 300.
Yeah, but I think your conditioning's, I don't remember you being this lean. I mean, it's hard to tell when you're that big because it's like when large pros guest pose and everyone's like, oh, he's so fat. Yeah. It's like, no, he's carrying a lot of water, but I guarantee if you put on posing suits right now, you would look a hell of a lot fatter. He's got abs, he's got quad separation, and that's kind of where you're at. You've got that a lot of water through your torso and the lower back and glutes and stuff, but you have a full set of abs, you got quad separation. And you can see when your water retention varies, you can see how lean you are, like on your dry check-ins.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I joked with someone the other day that skinny guys check their abs all the time. In the off season, I just check my ankles.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, we got some more questions. So Bobby, I actually on a video I did explain that what's in it. We just won't release that video. We filmed after the seminar because we had the videographer there, but we won't release that until later. What's in New Suppressor Max. I really want to say, but it's not like a simple thing. But if you did any of the research, if you spend any time doing research, and someone did, and they like a layperson messaged me on Instagram, and they weren't exactly correct, but they were on the right track as far as what type of compound it was, as far as like what, was it carbon based or nitrogen based or yada yada. Let's see what we got. Just nutrition for young children. You have a hard time getting my 18-month-old to eat a decent amount of whole protein. Yeah, you're going to. The weird thing about children is they don't really need. Children thrive on high fat because basically everything that they're going through, is the hormonal involvement. It really does well on fat. I remember reading a study one time where it showed that young children thrived on diets at 50% fat or higher. So rather than trying to get them to eat chicken, which they're not going to, see if they'll eat, like a piece of ribeye or something like that.
What was this age? 18 months?
What's that?
Was that 18 months? Was the age?
Yeah. Someone has a child. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wet basements.
Because I mean, I assume breast milk is similar to cow's milk, and that it's going to be high fat if you don't separate the fat out, right? Yeah, and they do very well. And so even chicken nuggets, which every kid will eat. I mean, so that's probably what I'd focus on is they won't eat lean meats. They're not going to eat chicken. I mean, even an 18-year-old, you'll struggle to get it and eat healthy meat proteins. But kids, they do well with fats. So if you can get them to eat fatty protein, that'll work. Do any anabolic increase collagen uptake? Twin? I honestly don't know on that. If I knew, I would take that one all the time. But
yeah, I honestly don't know. Thanks, Lodi Carson. He's happy we're back.
Thank you.
Dave, you need a bigger shirt.
Well, I wanted to wake up.
Mr. Kenny here says you need a Doyle rules. Okay, Keith Summerall, best low carb meals to keep full, and how high do you like to push fiber on those days? I don't have a fiber requirement really, so I'll see if Dave has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume we're talking a diet here. The thing I like the most is to have red meat meals, which if your diet allows for it, I would do that. Like the meals that keep you full is in a diet on a low day, like, flank and avocado if I still get added fat. That probably helps more than anything. I wish veggies helped more, but it more like makes me feel better psychologically that I get to eat something that's higher volume than just the meat and some fat, but I'm still starving.
Yeah, I don't notice any real like gastric emptying reduction or any satiety increase from vegetables. I noticed that if I do go crazy on it though, you'll get some pretty bad upset stomach. And I had I used to not put limitations on I'm getting really bad feedback again. Just so I don't know why it comes in and out. But yeah, that's perfect. Whatever we did. But like the times that I've had clients have really bad GI issues, and I always talk about one female client like 20 years ago who I didn't put limitations on certain vegetables. I said if they were like green leafy vegetables like asparagus or spinach or broccoli, I just said go ahead and eat it. You're not going to gain fat. You're not going to eat enough spinach or kale or iceberg lettuce to gain a bunch of fat. But this girl was eating 40 full stalks of asparagus with every meal, not just the tips either. And she was telling me how like terrible GI distress and so much discomfort. And we're working through everything, and she says she has asparagus with every meal. And I'm like, okay, it's a real mild diuretic. That should be causing that. I'm like, are you weighing the asparagus? And she said, well, like you can buy them in 10 stalk chunks, and I eat 4 of those every meal. And I was like, I can't believe you're alive right now. That's like 36 pounds of asparagus a day.
That's all like at least $12 worth of asparagus at every meal too.
Yeah. She was from a well-to-do family. She was younger. I don't think money meant anything to her. So
yeah, I almost never have GI problems, but the one time I did since starting bodybuilding was that first prep because it was so miserable, and I like most meals that didn't have carbs, which is a lot of them by the end, I would try some huge salad, and I wouldn't cook any of it. And a large volume of raw vegetables is just god awful for your stomach.
Yeah. So I don't think veggies help much. Veggies are interesting because that's if you talk to any average person, they're going to tell you that veggies. Where's my lighting doing that? That veggies are like the healthiest thing in the world. Because for whatever reason, that just, they got micronutrients. And the thing that's like interesting about America or any first world country is we no longer die of nutrient deficiencies. 50% of us die from the opposite, from overnutrition. 50% of them, and that goes back to the sucralose also. 50% of Americans die of obesity related illness, and nearly every single one of them will have insulin resistance due to excessive sugar intake. And so even if the sucralose thing was an issue, it's like we have no evidence that this does anything that correlates with death, but half of us are going to die from sugar.
Yeah. But I guess to come back to the original question of like, how do you at least stay sane on these low carb meals? Aside from eating a little bit fattier proteins if your diet can swing it, I think having some vegetables just keeps me sane psychologically because I hate looking at a plate that has almost nothing on it. So if I grill some steak, I like grill some zucchini. That's my go-to because it doesn't give me gas. And I feel like some vegetables, though, if you pound them too much during prep, you might be doing damage to your stage look. Like if you pound broccoli for 3 or 4 meals a day, all during prep, and that's always giving you gas and distension, probably isn't going to be good for your stomach.
And that's the thing too. The distension really isn't from GH or insulin. And I don't know. People think that because it started happening when that use when the use of those really came into play. But what also happened when the use of those came into play is you started getting the mass monsters and the amount of food that the mass monsters have to eat. And a couple of things happen in prep. One thing that happens in the higher protein, lower carb intake is that your gut gets dried out. And anyone who's done a prep knows that you have a hard time going number 2 late in prep. And so I recommend eat one or both or even a combo of Miralax and Dulcolax. Dulcolax increases the mucus production of your colon and small intestine, and Miralax is an osmolartic laxative. It kind of lubes the chute, basically. It pulls water into that area, which is what you're missing. And so, but that's what happens is you get this massive food intake, and then you get dried out, and you're not passing that food out, and it builds up. And and when you're eating the amount of food the really large guys eat, that leads to like semi-permanent distension. And over a long enough period, it leads to permanent disfiguration of the stomach. What's up, Jimmy? All right, Sicilian cannoli and espresso. It says, can you still rebound effectively on a cruise? Probably not. And you have to remember with the rebound is, why is it so? Why do people always ask that? And the rebound's 4 weeks. It's not like I'm asking you to blast for half a year again. You're holding the cruise back for just a couple of weeks, and then you cruise right after the rebound. And so your total weeks on cycle are going to be probably the same in either way over the course of a 52-week year. You're just moving when the breaks are. You're moving the one break just simply like 4 weeks later. And so that, you could rebound on a cruise, but I don't think it'll be effective. You'll add fullness and stuff, but you're not going to get the full cruise benefit.
I think part of the reason people seem to wonder this a lot, and I wonder if they're asking that because they're really worried that their blood work is just absolute trash at the end of the show prep.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is, but if you're not completely asinine with your doses of things like Tren, Winnie, Anavar, it might not be as bad as you think. And I know I'm particularly gifted in that I don't really get bad blood work on much. So maybe this is just N=1, but I've gotten bloods like a couple weeks after a show and estrogen was crushed and my lipids were already just about back up to be fine and everything else was in range. And I suspect that if you're not a complete idiot with your doses, you just spent 4 months dieting and doing a lot of cardio, both of which are good for your health. So you're not working in your favor despite some.
And your body weight's down.
Yeah, and your body weight's down.
And you have to remember. Sorry, I keep cutting you off. But you have to remember that the rebound isn't. We're not blast. You were blasting in prep. The rebound is just 2 compounds at 60 injectable only at about 60% of your peak off-season dose. So it is slightly. It's not that far above or that far away from a cruise. Yeah. There are relatively low doses already to begin with. All right, Brian Partita, best way to come off a weight loss program looking to bulk. One, I would never say looking to bulk because that means getting fat. I would look to find ways to increase the amount of good, clean, whole foods you're able to eat without getting fat. That's really the goal. But generally what I do, and I'll do after a full contest prep, where this would be the full initial, because if you do a shorter diet and aren't quite as lean, you won't get to do as many of these high days. But typically what I recommend is for a Saturday show, Saturday night after the show and Sunday are free days. Eat what you want, get it out of your system. You've been suffering for months. Get a jump on your hunger hormones, because anyone who's dieted knows that the diet after the diet is way harder. If you thought you were hungry in prep, wait till you start getting some food in you. Yeah. And then run about 5 consecutive high days, each with a cheat meal to end the day. And you're going to stay on your fat burners through that period, through that 6-day period or 5-day period. And just to help mitigate some of the excessive bloating. But that's how I kickstart things. And then from there, by then you should have enough of like a damper on your hunger hormones to be able to follow a pretty strict, like off-season high calorie diet.
Yeah.
You like gladiator films, John? You ever seen a grown man naked? Extra running tonight.
Halo and Proviron necessary the last weeks of a prep. Necessary is a strong word, so no, but I don't know. I didn't really do much of that stuff at the very end, the last couple preps, and I think I'd like to this next one. I took a lot of Proviron the last few weeks before our first prep, like 100 mg a day for a couple weeks. And it's hard to tell because that was my first prep, but I feel like it did harden me up. Not just more fat loss, but it did kind of make me a little harder. But then again, I was also way smaller and probably less water retentive at that point, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, necessary is a tough word. Are they beneficial? Yeah. Because what gives a hard look? Like an androgenic look, picture your grizzlied like male, versus your soft, feminine, high estrogen female, like that grizzled, hard, gritty skin look. is related to androgens in some level,
Yeah.
and low estrogen. And halo is a strong androgen, and proviron's an androgen that also has aromatase inhibition action. I think that's how I can't remember now. Is it anti-estrogen or aromatase inhibitor?
I think proviron acts as a very mild AI. I want to say like it actually prevents some aromatization.
So I thought, yeah.
It prevents aromatization, and it's known for increasing free tests. So I'm assuming that the mechanism there involves less aromatization and more freeing from SHBG. Am I thinking about that right?
Yeah.
But what's really going on there? I mean, like it seems pretty evident that taking some of these like hardeners does work, but most people are only using them in a significant dose for 2-3 weeks. So is it just redistribution of water? It's not like a lot of other physiological changes can be happening at that point.
Yeah, that's a tough one because like you got to. I think you need to differentiate hardeners versus like things that lower estrogen. Because really the reason to lower estrogen is that one of the reasons women carry higher body fat naturally and carry more water under their skin is because of the higher estrogen levels. And so you could, once you start getting to very low body fats, even with an androgenic blood profile, if your estrogen's elevated, your body is not as excited to burn body fat because it doesn't know what's going on. It correlates high estrogen with motherhood, and it doesn't want body fat to get below a certain level to get, because the whole reason we're here is to produce new offspring. That's the whole reason every species is alive. And so that, I think the estrogen stuff is more of a longer period because you need to lower estrogen to burn the body fat. The hard look, I think, is a little more correlated with androgen levels, and high androgen levels kind of give a grittier look to the skin. We have like a whole movie quote thing going through the comments right now. People are quoting Airplane 2 and Vegas Vacation.
The bread pudding joke's over my head. I don't know that one.
That's from I believe that's from Vegas Vacation because someone else said, Clark, you only need one plate here, Jimmy. And, I get better than two and a helper myself. Yeah. So
does Justin have any breakup advice? He's always wise.
Oh man, you want to know the truth? I have I have 4 daughters and a wife. Women, I think, take breakups easier than men, and so as a man you have to understand that. I think women are just, I don't know if it could be like from history, women lost men in war fairly often, and men didn't lose their wives like that. And so I think women, whether it is an evolved trait or a learned trait or however that works, when you have 50,000 years of women very frequently losing their loved males like that at a healthy age, they have to learn, because especially 50,000 years ago, 20,000 years, 10,000 years ago, if they didn't immediately turn around and find a new mate, they probably wouldn't survive, and their children wouldn't survive.
Yeah.
So in my experience, women recover from a breakup depressingly is from the man side quickly.
Yeah.
I feel like men take it much harder and much longer.
I think in the course of a relationship, the man's investment is probably larger on the front end, maybe much larger, because the man has to pursue. We're getting canceled here, aren't we? So it makes sense that up to a certain point, it's like, if for nothing else, the man's like, man, I put a lot into that, and it's just gone. But I mean, obviously, you stretch that out to like a couple that's been married 30 years. I don't think that either of them are going to take it well.
Yeah, I think, but I don't know. I've seen through the years of coaching, I've seen a lot of divorces, and the men, it destroys them, and then it really hurts to see some of the women how it does not seem to destroy them quite as much, and even worse, they become, and this is generalized, nothing against women. I got 4 daughters and a wife, so but okay, Joe Miller, yes, provider has a high binding affinity to SHBG. Thank you. Back to that. So yeah, it's just in my experience that, and it's hard as a man, and you can think what happens after breakup. If you're a woman and you're pissed and you want to get back at the man, or you just want to feel loved, what do? Go anywhere and give the eye to any male. And if you're attractive female at all, boom, you're in a relationship again. A man doesn't have that. And that's actually an interesting thing too that's going on right now, because and this is probably related to the internet a lot more, but historically you dated people in your hometown, and it was kind of like it worked out. You're like, the really high end men and women, the really attractive women and the really successful men, you know, form bonds, and like the lower level people had someone to turn to. Well, right now it isn't that way, and because men will fuck anything, the women are basically mating with the top 5% of men. I just saw a stat that was outrageous, and it was something like 40% of men under 30 are still virgins.
Wow.
And yeah, and like 90% of the mating is being done by like the top 20% of males spread out through all the females.
The latter stat I had heard. Yeah. It's
which is so
a return to how you imagine things might have been like in like caveman days, where there's a few dominant men who just beat the shit out of any man who tries to mate.
Yeah, now that happens on Tinder.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you used to, like, before the internet, you lived in a small town and you were ugly, you dated someone else that was ugly from the small town. If you were, you know, and it's like another thing I think that probably why, well, and man, I'm going to sound like a woman basher on this, but like, women, dogs, and children get loved unconditionally. Men don't really get that very much because, and a stat to kind of prove that is that women and men cheat in relationships at about equal levels. It's pretty even on who has affairs and who cheats on their spouse. But 70% of divorces are initiated by women, and 90% of those cases are initiated because of financial hardships by the man. He lost his job. He got injured and lost his job. For some other reason, he's unable to work, or he got laid off or something. And so, you know, kind of like this general, and this is not me, this is from like a class I took, you know, like a psychology class, but like in general, and I know anything that's in general does not mean always or absolute, because there's always a range, but women look for status, you know, and they try to like marry like slightly up on their socioeconomic status level, and men kind of look for beauty. And I think, like, if you look for beauty and then you taught to love unconditionally, and then you break up because you thought you really loved someone, good, bad, ugly, till death do us part, you know, and you lose your job, and now that person that you thought you could lean on to help get you through that hard time divorces you because of that hard time, they're obviously going to move on quicker, and you're obviously going to have a harder time. So I don't have much advice.
He asked for advice, I guess.
Yeah, I don't have much advice other than to know those things, and just like, she's going to move on quicker because all she has to do is bat her eye at the next guy she finds that's cute and they're dating. It's going to be harder for you. And not much I can say other than there's like a saying always on the internet, like, delete Facebook, hire a lawyer, and join a gym. And that's all you can do.
I mean, yeah, you should go no contact. Like, don't try to be friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really think men and women can be friends. Single men and women can be friends.
No, I mean, they can be, but the guy always wants to.
Right.
The guy will hop on top anytime. Yeah. The second she goes in the action.
Yeah, you certainly can't be friends with your ex. Like, once you've opened that door, it can't be closed. So yeah, work on something productive. You're going to feel like shit no matter what, but you might as well come out of it with something having been accomplished.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing, and that's probably another thing, is men aren't really allowed to be emotionally weak, you know, and there's no way you can't be after a breakup. It's devastating, you know, and so on top of that, you don't have anyone to turn to. I think John Rivas, he's on it also. Hello, my friend. I think we talked on one of the Goon platoons about that, was who do you turn to when you're brokenhearted? You don't. With them, like, you have your buddies, you don't, you know, like, that's just the way men operate, you know, and like, no one maybe wants to be that way, but we don't know how to handle that. We were never taught that. And like, I don't want to, you know, like, if your buddy's crying over breakup and stuff, like, you just go get drunk with them. You don't you don't let them cry on your shoulder, you know. And I don't think either person really wants. I mean, maybe people really do want that. I don't know, but it's just not in nature on average. Dave needs to join pro wrestling. There's more money in it, Dave.
I think my joints would be in a much worse place in the next 10 years than they will be if I just continue bodybuilding.
All right, Gumman, I have severe muscle cramps that last hours, and I have to use a muscle relaxer to stop cramping. Do you recommend I drink 3+ gallons of water? Absolutely not. The 3+ gallons of water is going to give you way worse cramps. You're cramping because of an electrolyte imbalance. And so what you have to remember is that your blood has to have a certain amount of sodium and a certain amount of all the electrolytes in it. And electrolytes are named that way for a reason, because they conduct electricity. They're positively or negatively charged atoms. Like, like, Na sodium is Na plus, chloride Cl minus, calcium Ca plus. Calcium might be 2 plus, I can't remember. But those conduct electricity, and that's how muscular contractions occur. And you need a proper balance of them. So if you drink 3+ gallons of water, your blood sodium level is going to get even lower, and you're going to cramp way worse. You need to get a baseline for your electrolytes. You increase sodium intake, keep water intake high, but definitely not over 3 gallons, not even over 2 gallons. And probably add an electrolyte complex or a Gatorade Zero throughout the day. And you can also try adding a sugar-free tonic water, because tonic has quinine in it, quinine sulfate. And quinine is really, it's not really super well understood, but it's kind of used to be given before, like Klonopin for restless leg syndrome. And it does seem to improve cramping for whatever reason.
Yeah. I have a funny story on this note. And I think this goes to show that some people will probably filter out sodium faster than others, maybe too fast in some cases. So there's this guy I lived with for a year. It was like I needed to move out of my parents' place, but I didn't quite have enough money to like get my own apartment yet. I just kind of started a business. So I lived with this dude. His name was Fritz. He was awesome. And like he was a quadriplegic, and the deal that he had was he'd have 3 roommates at any given time. It was just a bunch of young guys living in his basement, and he didn't have to pay rent. It's just every third night you're on the hook for like helping him out with stuff like eating. And he was like a super successful guy. He was like a lawyer, investment banker, tons of friends, despite only having motion from like here on up. So, and he also, I think this predated his, when he broke his neck, when he became quadriplegic, he like had this crazy, just constant like sodium deficiency. He just craved salt like nobody I've ever seen. And he would get hyponatremic extremely easily. Like if I would give him dinner, he loved barbecue, so he would get cheesy corn, and he'd tell me to take the salt shaker and make it look like snow on top of the bowl, and then feed that layer to him, and then make another layer for the bottom part of the bowl.
Man,
it was grossly salty, but he craved it so much. And there was a day when he'd have a nurse come every morning, and it was like 5 a.m. and the nurse like pounded on my door, and it wasn't my day to help him out, but the other 2 guys were going to work, and I was working from home. So she's like, he's like sweating. Something's wrong, because his sweat would be a response to a pain stimulus that he couldn't feel.
Oh, yeah.
At that point, he had a wound from a prior surgery on his butt, and we thought that it was going septic or something. And so I rushed him to the nearest hospital. We get in there, and they check him out, and it turns out he was just hypernatremic.
That's wild.
I came back. We brought him back, and I just made him a couple eggs and like made them with like probably 10 times the amount of salt a normal person would want on it.
That's interesting. I'm not like to that level, but I always crave sodium, and I basically all my favorite foods are foods that hold sodium really well. And my wife always gets mad at me because she thinks it's bad, and because I put so much salt on everything. But my sodium is always low on my blood work, or barely on the edge of normal. Always. And I pound so sometimes. I mean, like if there's a type of like seasoning I like, when I'm cooking, I'll pour some in my hand and kind of like lick it off my hand while I'm seasoning my food. John Rivas had a cheat meal. I was all hyped up. By cheat meal, he means methamphetamine and THC gummies. But monstrous strength and performance. Hey, Justin, is there a more visible way for a client to know you don't like them than pulling fats out of the diet? No, actually the opposite. That means I really like you, because if you don't have any chance of doing well in a show, I probably won't pull the fats, because so if I'm pulling fats, it means I believe in you.
It just sucks so hard.
Oh, God.
It sucks worse than a calorie drop would have you believe.
Yeah, it's like the one, as we've talked about this before, but it's the one thing that, like would make me like question, does thermodynamics really hold? Are the physicists really on top of that? Because it seems like for the calorie drop you make with removing fats, there's a unequal amount of body fat, weight, and everything that happens.
Yep.
But best email I ever got is when Justin switched the hit to lists. We'll have to move it back. I don't like sending good emails.
Yeah. I think every prep I've had, I had to ask, and I felt like I held off until because I felt like a pussy until I just couldn't. You're like, oh yeah, I meant to change that last week. Yeah, you're good. Go
oh man, yeah. It's hard. It's hard to remember. I mean, it like you have to remember when you're doing the diet. your whole life. It's all you think about, you know? And I do my best, but it's not my whole life. And so like, there's little things like that, not that often, but man, I feel terrible when I forget. The thing is like, it's not like keeping hidden is bad. It's just unnecessarily hard because you've got
Yeah, I mean,
nothing
it's not
to
like I
fuel it.
suffered for it. I think every time I've asked, I've been like, I don't care if I need to do 3 hours of list to make up for this. I just can't.
Yeah. So for all clients here, if you're listening, as a general rule, when I pull added fats completely, I don't keep you doing HIIT. I move you to list if I haven't already. And the reasoning for that is, aside from this, the difficulty and the fat, you don't have the energy stores for it, because some of the HIIT will be, you know, glycolytic, and you just have the risk of going hypo. And it's not bad. But the reason it can be bad is that when you go hypo, you lose your mind, and people will eat sugar or whatever to stop going hypo. And so at the risk of ruining the diet, that's why I don't. That's why I do it.
Okay, that makes me think of a question. So when you're going hypo in any context, I feel like the amount of sugar that you actually need to pull out of it is not nearly what people would think. But
So low.
in those 10 minutes or so where you feel the worst, you could just like eat your whole house.
Yeah. Well, you want to know what's crazy? You can do the math. If you have a blood, the average person has like 6 liters of blood. And so if you have a blood sugar level of 100 milligrams per deciliter, like, you know, blood sugar of 100, which is slightly high even, you have 6 grams of sugar in your body, in the bloodstream. Now, if you drop it to 60, where you're hypo, you have a little over like 4.2 grams. So the difference is 1.8 grams of sugar, not even 2 grams of sugar difference between going. So you don't need much at all. And I really learned that with my daughter, where as a type 1 diabetic, and like she handles going hypo so much better than I do because it happens so frequently. But she'll drink like 8 grams of carbs from a Capri Sun and just wait it out, and we'll be better. Where the second I go hypo, I could put down 30,000 grams of carbs, and then of course it finally. I'm no longer hypo, but then I'm in a coma and feel terrible.
You're like, oh, you fat shit. What did you just do?
Yeah, see, Shay, I love you. She said, makes me feel better now I pulled her fats. Yeah, Joe says he's bored as hell with the list. Well, I agree with that. I just hate cardio. I mean, it has to be done, but the people, I have so many clients who just like, who want, who say, yeah, I do 30 minutes every morning. Can you keep that in? I just really enjoy it. And I'm like, oh my God, I dread it. I don't know. Like, maybe I need some Ritalin or something, but
I enjoy the routine and like meditation of going on a walk in the morning. So
yeah, I can see that.
And right now I never skip HIIT. I hate doing it right now because at 300 pounds it feels horrible. But if I'm like 20 pounds lighter and the sessions are still only 12 minutes, I really like the way I feel afterwards and for the rest of the day. So it makes it feel like it was worth it.
That's I think one of the most important statements you can make for modern human existence. What you just said. For the weird thing about life is to have a better future life. So at any future date, to be happier and have a better existence, almost always requires you to be doing something you don't want to do right now.
Yeah.
And then, so then even in the future, you're spending most of your time doing things you don't want to do, but that version of what don't want to do is so much better that your life is better. And then an example would be like, like you graduate high school, you don't want to go to college, you just want to party, and you're having a blast, you're partying and, getting drunk and doing drugs and having so much fun. But 30 years later, when you're trying to do the same thing, you don't have a very good life,
Yeah.
When you go to college and study hard, and you get up and do your cardio, and and all these things you don't want to do, you go to work, and you do all these things you don't want to do, but you have a much more comfortable, enjoyable, happy, fulfilling life. And it's really all because of you spend most of your time doing things you don't want to do. And then over time, it's like investing. Over time, those things you don't want to do are much, much better things than, and it leads to a better life.
Do you think there's some interplay with, I don't know if IQ is the right word, but I'll just use the word IQ here, because I feel like the smarter you are, the more capacity you probably have to both enjoy things and take pleasure in things and also just hate things.
Yeah.
Because if I don't want to do something like hell, I really, really don't want to do it. But if I don't do the things I'm supposed to do, I just feel like a miserable sack of shit too.
Yep.
Like the whole partying all the time example, it's not happy after a very short time.
No. And I think George Carlin had or did he have a Coke problem? Some famous celebrity, George Carlin, but he kind of explained why he quit doing Coke. And it was like, like at the start, it's awesome. It's all awesome. Nothing bad. Like you come down, you don't feel so great, but it's great. And then eventually it's not pure awesome. It's, like there's some side effects and you feel crappy and your life's not doing that great and you're not getting enough sleep. And then that slowly keeps happening. And eventually there's almost no good because you just feel terrible when it's not in your system because you're withdrawing and you have no energy and you're exhausted and you need it to just function. And now you're no longer feeling good when you take it. It's just bringing you to baseline so you can function on your day. And then without it, you're a complete wreck. He said, like he felt like he was able to understand that and knew that the way out of that was to spend a shorter period of time feeling really bad, going through withdrawals and getting off it and letting his body return to normal. And that was obviously a better option than, but that's how, it's a weird thing, but that's how the world works. And I really try to tell my kids that all the time is that, cause it's not like we were looking, and this is fun, but it's 8:15. I promised my daughter I'd watch a movie with her at 8. It's Monday. We're still working after 8. We got to get up in the morning and go back to work. So it's not like this is, I'd rather be partying right now, but like doing things like that, you meet new people, you create a business, you create like kind of a life for yourself. And so really the best way to have a future good life is really to do the things you don't want to do right now.
Yeah. I do feel like there's a line though where if you're just constantly doing shit that not just that you don't want to do, but that you hate,
want
to look at something different. Like fortunately, I like writing software most days, but if it was just an absolute grudge to even sit at my computer every day, I'd probably need to look for a different day job.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's like it's a give and take, but it's more like doing the right things now, because in generally the right productive things aren't the most enjoyable things at the moment. I guess it's not it could probably refine that, and it's not doing the things you hate or don't want to do, but it's doing the things to be productive and beneficial to your life that aren't necessarily the most enjoyable thing in the moment.
Yeah. Joe asks, when will John and David post more deadlift videos? He needs to live vicariously through us. Yeah, I guess John doesn't pull much anymore. I've been doing RDLs the last few weeks. The heavier I get, the more pulling from the floor just messes me up orthopedically.
Oh my God. Can you do RDLs at this size? Doesn't your lower back?
RDLs are the best variation to do at this size because it's not quite all the way to the floor.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
You can start on the eccentric, so I can make it like really load the hips really well because I really need bigger glutes. But like Danny pointed this.
Dave carries a trailer around with him every day. He needs a CDL to walk down the street.
What Danny pointed out that I didn't want to admit was true is that every time I pull from the floor really heavy for a few weeks, my knees end up hurting. It's because she can give a much better explanation here. I just kind of end up way forward, and it's hard to stay on my hips for any movement. So it makes quad training really painful. And if I have to give up one thing, pulling from the floor or quad training is a lot more important as a bodybuilder. Yeah. So once I'm like 20, 30 pounds down in prep, I'll probably do like I did last prep and have another run of pulling from the floor, and that'll be really fun for like 6 or 8 weeks or so.
And I think you can make a strong argument that RDLs or some type of stiff leg, or where there's really the only hinge is, or the majority of the movement is at the hip, is better bodybuilding movement anyways.
Well, even now when I pull from the floor, it's more of a stiff leg, because part of the reason is just that the way I used to conventional pull, the bar would just eat up my shins, and it was gross. It was like week 1 they were pretty beat up, and by week 5 or 6, because they don't heal completely, weeks, and like you could see every rep, it was just like more and more blood in the bar. I had to start taking a bar brush like you'd use at a powerlifting meet to the gym, so I could chalk off the blood and get it crusty and then wipe it off. So yeah, I was worried that I was going to start getting infected in my shins or something. So
shit, I had something I was going to say about that, but now I can't remember. No, I don't remember. Oh, I was going to say, so you deadlift like a bodybuilder now. That's what that's anytime I deadlift or a power lifter, they'd always look at my form and like kind of wince. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm like, you're not doing anything wrong. You just deadlift like a bodybuilder. I'm like, what does that mean? Apparently, probably that. I don't get enough. Like
if it's like atrocious, like some bodybuilders do that like roll at the top almost, and it's like you're not really quite locking out, but you're not exactly keeping tension on the hips either. It's weird. I don't know. But if you just pull in a way where you don't give yourself much quad drive like a powerlifter would, you could argue that it's better for bodybuilding anyway. Like, do you want to keep tension on your hips and erectors, or do you want to put it everywhere else?
Trap bar deadlifts? I thought those were illegal now. Joe Miller says if you're 40 plus, D-ball versus Anadrol. Who would win in a fight? I honestly don't know, but I don't think either of them are animate.
I haven't used either of those since my last meet.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan of either. Ironically, I am a fan of Anadrol with females, and I don't even mention it much because you get so like the gut reaction is because it's bad, like it's harsh for men because it's so estrogenic and stuff and watery, but women are already estrogenic, and they would be using much lower doses, like 12.5 milligrams per day. And I find that women respond like incredibly well to it, like emotionally. The estrogen isn't an issue for them really. I mean, in a contest prep, at the end of prep, it would be, but and the doses are really low. And really, the reason Anadrol is weird. It's one of those that Anadrol is another telephone game thing because the reason Anadrol was like known as such a harsh chemical before, like when there was so little information, it's because D-ball was 5 milligram tabs, and Anadrol was 50, so it was 10 times the dose, And so if you just took by pills, like if you took 3 D-ball a day and then you took 3 Anadrol a day, obviously that's going to be harder.
Well, what's funny about that though is that people, I always get really skeptical when people claim that one drug is weaker per milligram than another. But with Anadrol, I really have to wonder because it's the one thing that we take, like bodybuilders and strength athletes, that's dosed way higher clinically than we take it. Yeah,
that's like if you ever see some of the doses they would give for anemia before they add erythropoietin was wild.
Yeah, I think it was something like I've seen like 3 to 5 mgs per kg. If you were even a reasonably large male, like a 220 powerlifter, that would be 500 mgs a day.
That's insane. Yeah.
Obviously, if you're not anemic, is going to be really bad for you.
Yeah, it's probably if you are anemic, it's going to cause some issues too. But you're going to be strong as hell. You don't need red blood cells when you're that strong. But you know what? Some of the clinical stuff is really interesting because everyone hears with PEDs, right, anabolics, and they think that your dick gets smaller, and everyone who knows it really is just the testicles that get smaller. But I used to work at a pharmacy in college, and they had halotestin there, American brand halotestin, and on the side effects, one of the side effects listed was follicular hypertrophy, like hypertrophy of the phallus. It's a dick enlargement. Right. So I stole those as quick as I could. Well, it didn't work. I got the medicine line
actually given to boys who are like not starting puberty when they should be.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, there's some weird like clinical application because how's that going to kickstart puberty? Because it's definitely shutting down your natural production, I have to imagine. But yeah, there's some weird like the clinical understanding of anabolics is really interesting. I'm going to have to get off pretty soon because I was supposed to watch a movie at 8 with my daughter.
Well, I got jealous of the alien conversation last time with Rivas.
Okay, let's do it.
I haven't looked much into aliens lately, but I guess how Instagram, you start looking at 1 or 2 things of a topic and it'll start just feeding you tons of it.
Uh-huh.
Started looking at astronomy stuff, and so now I'm getting all this content about black holes, which is like a black hole for me. Have you ever looked into that stuff?
Yeah, no, I actually have a book you can buy, Principles and Mathematical Applications of General Relativity. And in it, I describe the mathematics of the black hole and the Schwarzschild radius and show that and prove that time goes to infinity when you reach that crossing point. You can buy it on lulu.com. I should publish it somewhere else. I wrote it in grad school. But yeah, no, I like it. Like decent understanding. Black holes are really interesting. It's just that what happens is the mass gets so dense. So like mass is related to velocity, like kinetic energy, 1/2 mv squared, and the velocity of light is c with the speed of light 300 meters per second. And so what happens is if you can eventually reach a point where the mass is so high that even light cannot generate the velocity to escape it. And that's the black hole, is that it's nothing can escape it. But what's interesting in that is things, and Stephen Hawking's proved this, that black holes do release things. They radiate radiation, which works through like a different principle. It's almost like a quantum tunneling type principle.
Yeah.
And so it slowly releases Hawking radiation out of a black hole. And so eventually every black hole over a long enough time period will disintegrate on itself. Now that's an extremely long time period, because if the sun became a black hole, it would be like, I can't remember, like it basically will shrink to the size of an atom. All of it will just be that dense. And so that's a lot of mass, because like we have supermassive black holes at the center of most galaxies that are hundreds of trillions of times bigger than that. So you're talking like essentially nearly an infinite amount of time to radiate out. But then Leonard Susskind from Stanford, really cool dude. Leonard Susskind was a plumber when he was 16. His dad was a plumber. And I don't know how this plumbing genius, and he talks like a plumber. He's like a regular dude, but he's freakishly sharp. He did a thing called like a holographic theory, where you could basically look at the black hole as a hologram, and it kind of explains that mechanism more naturally. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of asked John if you had any like interesting things on black holes.
No, you know more about them than I do, as for what you just said. There's one that I think it was just discovered, I want to say in the last 2 or 3 years, called TON, or TON 618. And there's just all this stuff about it now, because it's the largest that's been discovered at this point. And I think the mass was something like 50 billion solar masses.
Yeah.
And
so this is like I don't think people really understand. I don't have a piece of paper. Oh, damn it. How massive the sun is. So if this was all the mass of all the planets, all the asteroids, everything in the solar system, this is the sun. This is every other planet, every planet, every asteroid, everything else, every moon in the solar system, and this is the sun. That's how big the fucking sun is.
Right.
And if you think just how big the Earth is, the Earth is because almost all of this is Jupiter and Saturn. So you remove those and you get like this, and that's every other planet. And when you go down to Earth, you get basically this, or even less, because like several million Earth can fit into the sun. But so 90 billion solar masses is incomprehensibly huge. We just can't even fathom it. And then that gets compacted all into a tiny, tiny, tiny mass. But
even with it being that compact, I've just there are like so many cool simulations now, like they just compare the relative sizes of everything. And so they went from the sun to, and they were just looking at volume, from the sun to I think the largest known star called Stephenson.
Yeah.
That, and then they compared that to increasingly large black holes. And I think this recently discovered one, TON, was, its total volume, or I guess if you look at like the size of the event horizon, was like nearly the size of our galaxy, I think. Which how can that live at the center of a galaxy? With that if it does, that galaxy itself must be just so much more
enormous. Well, yeah, you ever notice almost all galaxies are swirling? Early galaxies aren't always. Some of there's old many billion, like 15 billion year old cluster galaxies. All newer galaxies are swirling galaxies, and they're disks, because there's a black hole, and the black holes, nothing moves, nothing is static. Nothing moves, things are always rotating. And when you get to that size, and you think like a figure skater, as they shrink in and they pull their hands in together, how they start rotating faster. Yeah. Well, imagine 90 billion solar masses all that were rotating really slowly. And as it comes in and collapses, they're rotating so fast that rotation with that gravitational pull makes the entire galaxy swirl. And that's why all galaxies are like swirling like that. And that's why we're moving through space on Earth at like 38 kilometers per second. But let me share my screen here. It should be the size of suns.
Yeah, these are the kind of videos I was thinking of.
Oh, crap. I gotta go back so I can actually press play on that one. This is like 4 minutes long, but these are like dwarf planets and Pluto. I'll just go through the first couple suns or stars, but it's mind-boggling. I'm going to speed up. No one cares about the moon. So there's Earth, and there's Kepler and exoplanet. There's Neptune. There's Uranus. never not funny. But we're going to get to the sun here. So that's how big our sun is, which is a pretty like it's a dwarf star. It's tiny. And so and that's another dwarf star. And so you can't even see Earth anymore, and now you're getting into like the bigger stars. And they get so much bigger than this. And now you can imagine 90 billion of these condensed down into the size of like, a few miles.
That Sagittarius A, is that a smaller black hole?
I don't, I didn't even see. I don't know what that is. And like the red giant and blue giants are related to the heat. Yeah, it must be a black hole. Blue shifted light means it's higher frequency light, higher energy light, and red light is because light can't change the speed it travels, and so if it all it can do, it has to travel the same speed, but if it's at less energy, like anyone knows, like a higher frequency wavelength, it has higher energy. And so when there's less heat, the sun can only travel at the same speed. The only thing it can do to kind of decide how much energy it has is how long the wavelengths are. And that's actually an interesting thing. That's why we can't see the inside of an atom, because to see, we have to send light. And if we send light that the size of an atom, because you can only tell, like if I want to know how big this piece of paper is, and I send a wave that's this big, all I could say at that point is it's somewhere less than the size of that wave. To get really precise, I need to have like thousands of waves travel through that. Well, when you get something that high frequency to the we got the supermassive black holes, get to that amount of frequency to see the inside of an atom, it would have so much energy that it would basically be like throwing an elephant at a cat at 1,000,000 miles an hour. We wouldn't see anything. We would know at one point the cat was here, and that's one of the reasons you can't know quantumly position and momentum of a particle at the same time. Another interesting thing with that, I'm going to stop with this. Another interesting thing with that is mathematically you can show that also, in that if like in normal algebra, A times B is equal to B times A. 6 times 8 is the same as 8 times 6. That's commutative property. Quantum algebras are not commutative because they're matrices, because they're a distribution of all possible like locations the atom or the quantum system could be. Well, if you actually say, well, why can't I know position and momentum at the same time? And so if you take like P is momentum, if you take X times P minus P times X with the quantum operators, you don't get 0, you get negative IH bar, which is awesome because 1, it's negative. 2, I is an imaginary number, the square root of -1. So now you have a negative and a square root.
Negative of negative square root 1.
Yeah, but only when it's squared, and then it'll be positive when you square it to get an absolute value, which is important, another important value. But then negative, but H bar is is Heisenberg's Planck constant, which is 0 to 35 decimal places. So that's why we can know our position momentum at the same time, because it is it does equal out to 0 till you get to the 35th decimal place, and then it's a 6. So yeah,
incredible. Well, I can keep talking about
the movie that's on the docket. I forgot. I think High School Musical 3, unfortunately.
Oh man, maybe Danny and I'll watch that tonight too. Our favorite.
All right, we can sing "Fabulous" or whatever those. I can't remember the songs they're playing all the time, but Cora's on a High School Music, but. Yeah, she's antsy. I'm gonna have to call it on this. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it. That was a fun one.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, remember to like, subscribe, follow, show your tits, and anything else that will help our channel. See you guys.
See you guys.